Hi, everybody. The press conference this morning, and thank you once again for making the time to come and see me. The press conference this morning is really about hate speech. And I'm going to limit my remarks to the paper that I will circulate after the press conference to everybody so that you work with that script. So let me begin. I'm quite perturbed at the level of public discourse in Fiji as we head towards the national elections. Masquerading itself as an exercise in freedom of expression, political discourse has in fact descended to unabashed racial vilification, and in some instances, its content is tantamount to injurious or hate speech. What is even more disconcerting is the complicity of select Fijian journalists and the media, either wittingly or those that remain oblivious to the laws of Fiji, despite several awareness workshops on the crimes decree, the media industry development decree, and the constitution. The unfettered prominence given to Ratu Timothy Vesikula's intervention at the Tailuvu Provincial Council meeting, aired on Fiji Television's Fiji One News segment on the 1st of April, is an indictment of this retrogression. Ratu Timothy Vesikula's statements are nothing short of hate speech and in breach of the Bill of Rights provisions of the Fijian Constitution. In his words, and I quote, "From the past experiences, this group of people, known in Tambara as the Vasu," and he was referring to Indo-Fijians, "will try to pacify you and assuage you just to have their aspirations met. These people do not want you to lead them. They want a constitution, they only want a constitution, and other investment initiatives done. Let me warn you that the upcoming elections will be a tough one, because even though we have lived together for a long time, you can't mix water with kerosene," unquote. How different are Ratu Timothy Vesikula's statements from that of Asenada Daudau when she likened Indo-Fijians to obnoxious weed. Fiji TV ran the comments of Ratu Timothy Vesikula for approximately 3 minutes. Despite the fact that a response was made by government, Fiji TV did not air it. My intervention this morning, however, is not because that it was a complaint lodged by the government, but emanates from the rather serious unconstitutional nature of the statements made by Ratu Timothy Vesikula threatening racial and communal discord and the blatant breach of the media code of ethics and practice on the part of Fiji TV. My decision this morning cannot be misconstrued, and I emphasize again, cannot be misconstrued as an impingement on the freedom of expression or dismissed as yet another instance of gagging media freedom by MIDA, as has been insinuated by some who are posturing as the Praetorian Guard of human rights, but sadly very quiet on the issue of hate speech. Section 17(1) under the freedom of speech, expression and publication guarantees every person the right to freedom of speech, expression, thought, opinion and publication, which also includes A. Freedom to seek, receive and impart information, knowledge and ideas. B. Freedom of the press, including print, electronic and other media. C. Freedom of imagination and creativity. And D. Academic freedom and freedom of scientific research. While 17.2 crucially prescribes the following, and I think this is very important for the media to understand, that freedom of speech, expression and thought, opinion and publication does not protect A. advocacy of hatred that one is based on any prohibited ground of discrimination listed or prescribed under Section 26, and 2. constitutes incitement to cause harm. And I want the media to take full cognizance of Section 26 of our Constitution. And it was also imperative in the preservation of the following, and the law is very clear. 3. To the extent that this is necessary, a law may limit or authorize the limitation of the rights and freedoms mentioned in subsection 1 in the interests of A. national security, public safety, public order, public morality, public health, or the orderly conduct of elections. B. The protection or maintenance of the reputation, privacy, dignity, rights or freedoms of other persons, including 1. The right to be free from hate speech, whether directed against individuals or groups, and 2. The right of persons injured by inaccurate or offensive media reports to have a correction published on reasonable conditions established by law. C. Preventing attacks on the dignity of individuals, groups or individuals, or respected officers or institutions in a manner likely to promote ill will between ethnic or religious groups, or the oppression of or discrimination against any person or groups of persons. 4. In this section, and I think this is very crucial here, hate speech means an expression in whatever form that encourages or has the effect of encouraging discrimination on a ground listed or prescribed under section 26. Furthermore, MIDA finds Ratu Timothy Vesikula's speech in contravention of section 65, urging political violence or inciting communal violence provision of the 2009 Crimes Decree. Section 65, subsection 2 states, a person commits an indictable offence which is triable summarily if the person by any communication whatsoever, including electronic communication, or by signs or by visible representation intended by the person to be read or heard, A. makes any statement or spreads any report which is likely to 1. incite dislike or hatred or antagonism of any community, or 2. promote feelings of enmity or ill will between different communities, religious groups or classes of the community, or 3. otherwise prejudices the public peace by creating feelings of communal antagonism, or B. makes any intimidating or threatening statement in relation to a community or religious group other than the person's own, which is likely to arouse fear, alarm, or insecurity amongst the members of the community or religious group. I wish to remind you all that the penalty for this under the decree is imprisonment for 10 years. So people really need to realize the implications of their actions as far as the law is concerned. Section 66, subsection 1 states, a seditious intention is an intention, and I'm just going to read 2 of them, 4 and 5, to raise discontent or disaffection amongst the inhabitants of Fiji, or 5, to promote feelings of ill will and hostility between different classes of the population of Fiji. Fiji television is giving unfettered giving unfettered prominence to Ratu Timothy Vesikula's speech, has failed to comply with Schedule 1, Section 18.1 of Media Codes of Ethic and Practice, provisions of the 2010 Media Industry and Development Decree. And I'm going to make reference to several elements of the decree where I feel that there's been an infraction. 1. Accuracy, balance, and fairness. A. Newspapers and magazines, radio and television, broadcasting organizations, websites, and internet newsletters and journalists working for them shall report and interpret news and current affairs honestly. They shall aim to disclose all known relevant facts, shall take care not to publish material which is inaccurate, misleading, or distorted by wrong or improper emphasis or any other factor. B. If a significantly inaccurate, misleading, or distorted statement is published or broadcast, it must be corrected promptly with due prominence, and where appropriate, an apology must be published or broadcast. D. Media organizations have a duty to be balanced and fair in their treatment of news and current affairs and their dealings with members of the public. 2. Opportunity to reply. Media organizations have an obligation to give an opportunity to reply to any individual organization on which the medium itself comments editorially. 6. On discrimination. A. Media organizations shall avoid discriminatory or denigrating references to people's gender, ethnicity, color, religion, sexual orientation or preference, physical or mental disability, or illness or age. C. Media organizations shall be sensitive to and particularly careful about possible effects of discriminatory references to vulnerable minorities in prejudicial or pejorative contexts. D. While media organizations, and I think this is the crucial one, while media organizations are free to report and comment on all matters of public interest, it is their duty not to publish or broadcast material in a form likely to promote or encourage communal hatred or discord. Furthermore, under Part 4, this is the content regulation of the 2010 Media Industry Development Decree, Section 22 explicitly stipulates the following. The content of any media service must not include material which A. is against the public interest or order, B. is against national interest, or C. creates communal discord. Section 24 on offences relating to content regulation of the Media Decree states, and I quote, a breach of any of the provisions in or under Section 22 and 23 by a media organization shall constitute an offence, and the media organisation shall be liable on summary conviction to a fine not exceeding 100,000, or in the case of a publisher or editor to a fine not exceeding 25,000, or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years, or to both. So the consequences are pretty serious. Now let me go to MIDA's decisions. 1. As an immediate measure of redress, Fiji TV is required to comply with 1B of Schedule 1, Section 18.1 of the Media Code of Ethics and Practice. This is the question about retraction. Right? 2. It is imperative that Fiji TV take cognizance of 1F under Schedule 1, Section 18.1 of the Media Code of Ethics and Practice and fully comply with its provisions, which stipulates, and I quote, "Media organizations shall report fairly the result of any legal action brought against them and have an obligation to publish or broadcast without diluting the finding any adjudication by the media tribunal or a complaint made against them." 3. MIDA will seek further legal advice on the possibility of imposing a fine in adherence with Section 24 of the Media Industry Development Decree. But I must emphasize, and I've always put this on record, that I've always believed that fines alone don't solve anything. What we need to see is an epistemic shift, a change in mind frame. 4. While MIDA recognizes that it remains government's prerogative to execute legal proceedings against Ratutimodi Vesikula for inciting hatred and racial ill will, it will be closely monitoring the tenor of public discourse in the lead up to elections and the role of the media in this process. This will be a key task of the Independent Media Monitoring Unit. 5. Furthermore, in the interest of transparency, the authority will require full translation of speeches and text presented in the vernacular at all political rallies and forums, and it is incumbent upon the media in Fiji to ensure that there is no dissonance. Again, no dissonance in the content of speeches and text presented either in the vernacular or English in their various modes of delivery. 6. The authority is now requiring all freelance journalists to register, including a full declaration of the various organizations that they serve, to the Media Industry and Development Authority. Since they live and operate in Fiji, they are required to respect the laws of this country. 7. The conduct of a number of journalists on block size leaves much to be desired. One just has to see their contribution on Friends of the Fiji Media block site. I'm now asking all editors to address this issue as a matter of urgency. This is a question of professionalism. This is a question of ethical journalism. Be very careful what you write on these blog sites, because you've got an important responsibility. This is not to suffuse the fact that you have, certain political proclivities. We all have subjectivity. But that should not come in the way of your work. I've seen a very senior person from DFAT, who I've had several meetings with, fully engaging in Friends of the Fiji Media. So what are the protocols around these things? I know of an ABC correspondent who's also with Island Business, writes all kinds of statements, and absolutely callous remarks, unsubstantiated. That's not the way journalists should be conducting themselves in this country. The media must not antagonize, but should play a much more productive role in fostering cohesion, engendering an ethos of robust debate, fostering a culture of deliberative democracy based on reason and respect for difference, while upholding the law and adhering to the protocols of responsible journalism at all times. Thank you.
Thank you. We welcome questions. I hope you put your email addresses on a piece of paper so that we can send you this
the statement in a PDF version which you can use. But I do want to say that the kinds of issues that we raise, and I'm grateful that you're here, it needs to be effectively communicated to your colleagues. This is why I've always said we need to move beyond the fetish of just certificates of participation. When I did the constitutional workshop, I took full cognizance of the fact that there will be consequences. People need to understand what the laws are. The laws need to be respected at all times. I'm not above and beyond the law, neither is the government nor any other member of the public. We're all subjected to the same set of laws. And the media authority has to conduct its job independently in ensuring that there is some responsible journalism. So this is not a vendetta against select media outlets. People are saying that I'm a lackey of the regime. I've got no dog in the fight except the fact that I need to judiciously undertake this responsibility. And this is a huge responsibility as the chairman of MIDA. And I think MIDA is an important authority. So I'm very serious about the job that I'm doing, and I expect the media to be absolutely serious. And if you have a question, if you have an issue, raise it with me. Don't resort to block sites where you just trash people, because that is not a sign of democracy. That is not a sign of freedom of expression. So, take full cognizance of what the law says and carry yourself with that kind of decorum that is expected of you. I think the implications of this case is profound in the sense that, in the lead up to elections, I suspect that there'll be a ton of, politicians coming out and making similar statements. Well, they ought to know what the consequences will be should they venture in this particular trajectory and assume the tone that this gentleman has taken. And the media needs to be very, very careful. Report by all means. Report all critical matters, but know what the rules are. The rules are very clear about hate speech. This is why we spend a lot of time on the question of defamation, on the question of contempt of court, on the question of hate speech, because, these things are absolutely very, very mercurial. And so, I'd say read the Constitution, read the decrees again and again, because that is going to keep us all in the clear. Yeah? Any other questions?
Actually, sorry.
Yes, Sherry.
You mentioned something, but I didn't quite get that completely.
Sure.
The translation speak. We would now have to submit that to MIDA?
I'm saying that it's incumbent upon journalists, because when they start presenting, various speeches or texts in the vernacular, do the translation. The public needs to know that the translation is actually doing justice to the text, either in English or the vernacular. Because, this is a question of transparency. There's so many people who don't have access to the English language, as much as there's so many people who don't have access to Hindustani or Fijian, for that matter, right? So we want to make sure that this is actually consistent. The other thing is that, I know of so many, politicians, and a number of people have raised these things with me. They'll say one thing in English, they'll say something else in the vernacular, because they're either pandering to some ethno-nationalist demand or anything of that sort. So it's your job to ensure that there's transparency in this process. The public has the right to know the kinds of statements that are being made. It's not to submit to MIDA. It's to make sure that that translation takes place. And we do justice to that translation. Yeah? Yes.
Government has lodged a official complaint.
Yes. Yes, it has. There's an official complaint from the Ministry of Information yesterday, and I've done an official response, which I'll be sending them shortly. But this press conference, in essence, encapsulates my position on it. Yeah? Yes, please.
So this is your full investigation that you've done?
Excuse me, if we could just get you to mention your name, your organization, then your question, please.
Philip, from FNIC.
Yes, hi.
So this is your full investigation that you've done, and this is your decision that you've come up with?
Yeah. And because, a ton of other things around the question of fines and all of that, I still need to seek legal advice. But I need to this is the preliminary position. And this is a very carefully considered position on the question of hate speech. I think that as far as the Constitution is concerned, as far as the Crimes Decree is concerned, as far as the Media Industry Development Decree is concerned, it's very consistent. It does not constitute a deviation from the provisions of the law.
So Fiji TV knows, have they been notified about this?
I will be in touch with them after this. I need to formally communicate this. But the press conference really is to send a message out to all media outlets and journalists in this country to be fully aware of the question of hate speech and the fact, because they will be dealing with more and more politicians and more political rallies and forums to take full cognizance of this thing.
So have you gotten the Fiji TV side from their side for what happened?
Well, they're here.
Yeah,
as you as
I met them yesterday.
And the MIDA director has spoken to Jeff, and we've been in conversation. But this is an open forum, so please pose any questions.
In the letter of complaint lodged by MIDA, did they mention that they also be taking the issue further with the relevant authorities?
No, they've appealed to MIDA because of our constitutional brief. Rita? Yes, please.
Is there a time frame in which the freelance journalists are required to register?
I think
I think it's clear in the media decree. Once the decree came out, everyone that's involved in media in Fiji should have registered. If you are operating in Fiji, you should have registered. And that goes even for freelancers and for foreign media companies that have people here. That's very clear here.
So what sort of information? Is there a standard form, or what kind of information do they provide?
Well, what it says, the affidavit, just like FBC, Fiji TV, they've come and registered with Fiji TV, so with MIDA. And it's so clear in the decree. So that's why, we're saying people are going around saying things, but it's a matter of reading the decree. So you cannot be in Fiji and operating as if you are someone else. You're not confined
bound
to
by the laws of the
and
country.
the regulations of this country. And there are fines because, for organizations who have been ignoring, there are penalties in the media decree.
So no one's registered so far? Any registered?
Well,
Freelancers?
we
No.
know of quite a few freelance journalists, working in the country, and I'm expecting that reason will prevail, and they will approach MIDA, because at some point we will have to draw a line and get them to register, or else we'll have to seek recourse to the decree. My problem with a ton of these freelance journalists is that these are the people who also go to various blog sites, who distort a ton of things. They act as recalcitrant elements. This is nothing to do with freedom of expression and all of that. Sheer recklessness. And I need to deal with that. Because, they cannot be the law and the transgression in itself. I want to make that absolutely clear. So these rogue elements will need to abide by the laws of this country. I'm not going to accept deliberate sabotage.
I think the thing that we are saying here is that, you guys are all within the regulations. And why are we having people outside that do not fit in? That's why it's here. It's so simple. If you want to operate, media in Fiji, then you have to follow regulations. And there are fines as well. It's clearly stated. I think for organizations, it's $100,000.
Yes, Mika.
Your findings and decisions this morning, were they purely based on the material that was aired by Fiji TV, or the whole context of Dr. Visco's utterances to Barimarama on the day?
I viewed that. I have to say that my decision is purely based on this one element, which is the question of hate speech. And the point is that even if you try to contextualize this speech, the issue is that a certain a section of the community was incriminated against. Whether it does not suffuse the fact that maybe this statement was made only to a particular community, but hey, that's how ethno-nationalism works, right? You appeal to the pathos of a particular community, and then you mobilize that logic. We all know what happened in 2000. And the media had a very complicated relationship then, right? So this is why I think we need to have this conversation on a very firm footing. We need to be absolutely clear what our job is. We need to ensure that we abide by the laws. And the laws on hate speech are absolutely clear. No matter how much you contextualize his speech, it does not suffuse the fact that this is the sentiment harbored by this gentleman towards a particular community, which is tantamount to hate speech. It has the potential to incite communal discord, racial hatred. And no matter how and whichever way you flip this truth remains. And we all know that that representation precedes reality. These kind of racial rhetoric, it's not simply, a semantic slippage. They have a real tendency to materialize into something bigger. So I just want to send a strong message now to all members of the public to be very, very careful, how they engage in the public sphere, how they conduct themselves, and the intent of their speech on others.
I think just adding to that, we're talking about hate speech. For those of you who came to the workshop, if you really understood what we had case studies, and in certain situations like that, there is something called slant. You don't just take what's been said, but you can put it in such a way that it's not non-threatening, but you are still reporting. We're not saying to not to report, but it's put in such a way that safeguards you guys. And for us, the concern is we're going back to hate speeches. MIDA had done a workshop to bring understanding to the media, but we see that some of the people who are not in the workshops, and this is the slip up, where those people who went through the workshops took it back to their own organizations. So that's our concern.
But this is my issue. Even the people who were in the workshop, and trust me, there are about 80 to 100 people in the workshop. Did they go out, and people from USP as well, did they go out and communicate this to the rest of the crowd? I mean, what's the point of a whole bunch of people attending workshop? And, what's the point of me spending, so much of MIDA's funds, doing these workshops when it's actually not going to be materialized? What were we doing that day? Just sitting around having sandwiches and listening to Madam Shamim and receiving our certificates from the Attorney General and the Chief Justice and walking away? I mean, this is very, very serious business. And I just really want the media to just get the hang of it. That as long as I'm here, I'm going to take this job very seriously. I follow the laws of this country. I expect you to follow the laws of this country. And let's do our job, independent of government, independent of political parties, independent of everybody. You've got an important job to do. And you must be independent at all times, ethical at all times, responsible at all times. Because you're public figures. So the world is watching you 24/7. You need to be very conscious of that. If that doesn't suffuse the fact that we don't have, ideological convictions, I do. But that must never influence my job as the chairman of the Media Industry and Development Authority. I cannot be seen favoring the government. I cannot be seen favoring any political parties. I cannot be seen favoring any particular media outlet. You need to be transparent. You need to be independent at all times. Yes, Patrick. Sure.
Can I sort of clarify something? TV broadcast speech. So are two people likely to be sued? The person who made it and TV. And can sort of TV just get away with making an apology, or is that a decision which?
Look, I've read out the decisions, and a copy of that will be conveyed to you, because one of the requirements is retraction. That's an immediate measure, like I said. And then 2 is to do a full recording of this, briefing, because that's imperative, so that the public is fully aware of what's going on. I'm still deliberating on the possibility of fine, but like I said, fines will not change minds. The media industry in this country needs to grow up. It needs to do its job seriously. It needs to read the laws. I don't care how much time it takes. Read the laws. Internalize